authorization for the city manager to sign all the necessary documents. The idea would be to begin construction on or about July 1 and have the project completed and ready for public use by the end of October. And so what they're asking, and what I'd like us to do, is put this under new business tonight as item 7. And what we would be asked at that time would be to schedule a public hearing on May 9th on all of the above issues and any other issues that might come up relative to Phase 2 of the WOW Trail, with an eye toward taking a council vote on those 3 matters at our second meeting in May. So that's more or less the outline of the plan. Councilor Hamel.
Alan, you said that you're going back to the planning board with some changes. Could you
Yes,
just...
with the final draft.
What changes
The only change, I think, will be these elimination of the 12 spots. The rest of it is the same.
Okay.
Yep. We didn't want to go that way, and then we wanted to come to you first on this.
And keeping in mind that the planning board approval of the plan was years ago now. I mean, it's taken that long to get all this done, so they haven't seen the latest engineering. And the primary difference is in that stretch of New Salem Street there. Councilor Lippman.
Alan, when would, if the construction went forward in the way that you described it would be, when would the parking actually be affected? And when would the right-hand turn be
Jack, you want to
affected?
weigh on this? Jack Lyman from Lyman Construction's here. I mean, I don't know that he's thought out exactly which end you're starting, or is there something you're...
Along with the elimination of those spots.
You come up to the microphone.
Yeah, we need to identify who's speaking, and please,
My name is Jack Lyman.
can you use the microphone, please?
We were the low bidder on the project. And along with the elimination of those spots, there is a coal plane operation that will be done on New Salem Street.
Is that resurfacing New Salem?
They're going to grind and resurface that street. Now, that would want to be done sooner than later. You wouldn't want to get into late October to do that, because you want to pave top, coat asphalt when it's warmer. So it would probably be more towards the beginning of or the middle of the project. August, early September.
So the parking would be affected as early as late August?
Yes.
And more likely early September is what you're saying?
Yes.
And the right-hand turn lane would be,
All that work would be done at one time. New curb, sidewalk, the brickwork along the other side of New Salem Street.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments at this point in time? With an understanding that when we get to new business, item number 7, which we just added, that we will have a motion, we'll entertain a motion at that time to hold a public hearing on this matter at our May 9th meeting.
I'm just letting you know that I'm not going to be here on May 9th.
So noted. Councilor Bear.
I wonder why this couldn't go into committee.
I'm sorry?
I wonder why this can't go into a committee, Public Works probably. I think there's a lot of information that, I mean, it's all very general. We haven't really seen anything.
Well, I think that when the council
More
takes...
information you have
The
to
council
give
takes the
public.
matter up again on May 9th or on May 23rd. On May 23rd, a motion would be germane to do that at either one of those meetings.
Okay, it's just when you have a public hearing, but they're not getting the input of what the council has found out or have questions to ask.
Well, I guess what we're doing doesn't mean we can't have a second public hearing.
Okay.
It means I think we want to hear from the public input on this as close to the front of this process as we can, and then go from there.
Brendan, we'll bring our engineer down for that meeting, so if there's specific issues that, reading the plan or what have you, he'll be here for that. I didn't think we needed him for tonight, so I didn't bring
Well,
him.
yeah, and also I would have liked to heard from the chief regarding the safety aspect of the elimination of that turn. I don't know if he wants to speak to it tonight or
Well, we can cover that. We're
Moving along.
May 9th. And everybody else. If there is anyone here tonight who can't wait until May 9th to address the council on this matter, there is a point in the agenda where we will take citizen requests to comment on current agenda items, and it would be germane for you to speak at that time, if you can. But the main public hearing on this issue would be held, assuming we pass this motion, would be on May 9th. So we don't drag this on forever tonight. Counselor Hamel?
When you come back for that public hearing, could you have a, either schematic or a pictorial laid out of where it's going to go and look like roughly?
Absolutely.
You know, behind the buildings?
I have
I think they have the plans with them tonight, if you'd
Okay.
like to look at them, yeah.
I mean,
No, that's
they're,
fine. Public hearing's fine.
they're pretty detailed, you know, it's hard to read, actually, I find it. Maybe we could come up with something that was.
Could it be just colored in to show
Yeah,
the
something
path?
that made it just easier for the general person
Right.
to look at and kind of understand it.
There's a public hearing, people may want to see how it's
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
flow or go,
yeah,
or,
I'll see what we can do on that.
okay. Might make it easier.
Anyone else tonight? Okay, thank you, we appreciate it.
You missed him.
I'm sorry? What? What do
I
you
think
say?
Pat Wood wanted
That
to
would
say.
wonder.
When we get to citizens' comments, we'll allow anyone else who wants to comment
Okay.
to comment on it. Okay, appropriate time on the agenda for anyone who wishes to address the council on any matter that is anywhere on tonight's agenda. Mr. Wood.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I'm Patrick Wood of Laconia. I'm on the Downtown TIF Advisory Committee, and at the request of the mayor, we met Tuesday at our regular meeting, and we discussed the WOW Trail requests. There was a unanimous vote to support the elimination of the right-hand turn lane on New Salem Street. As you know, we have previously also asked the city council to be very cognizant of the need for parking in downtown, and if you're going to eliminate a parking space, we wanted something in its place. So there was no consensus on the second issue. I have reached out since then individually, not on behalf of TIF, to the police chief, and we have had a conversation. There are about 20 spaces there, as Mr. Beadle indicated, and the police department is willing to talk about that and try to work to the extent they can, keeping in mind that they do need those spaces on a fairly regular basis, but are willing to be flexible in some discussion without making any commitment. Is that correct, Chief?
That sounds accurate.
All right. So that's where we are as far as the TIF committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to address the council tonight on a matter that is on tonight's agenda? Yes, sir.
Sean McGuire. The only thing I wanted to address that was brought to my attention later today, that this 12 spaces were going to be eliminated. I frequent Pittman's Freight Room, and I am also a user of the WOW Trail, so I'm kind of in a tough spot here, because I've obviously been to many WOW balls, and I support the WOW Trail. I just don't know if, while you're thinking this toward May 9th, and you did address the possibility of some type of a compromise, talking to Ms. Gandini, is it? They had looked at somehow, I don't know if there's a required size that this has to be, but I was kind of just addressing you now to think if there's any way to reduce that so you don't lose the car spaces, and how does it affect the entrance and exit of Pittman's, because it's fairly narrow there as it is. The handicap spaces, basically the people who need to get in, use the ramp to get into Pittman's, and again, there are so many different venues there. He does a lot of things that are great for the community as well. There are handicapped people that go to those things, and those spaces will be eliminated, I think, and I'm not sure on that, because you're taking away some of that entrance and exit. That's something I don't know. He said he's going to bring plans. I'd like to see that, and I think you guys should see it as well. It is the 50th anniversary of the ADA, And I think that's something to address. And for safety, going in and out of Pittman's, it's fine now. If you reduce it anymore, where does that leave you, as far as exiting and entering? The 12 car spaces being another option. That being said, the Wild Trail's a great thing, so hopefully this can be some type of a compromise to make them both work, because I think Pittman's does bring culture and brings business to downtown, as does the Wild Trail and projections. Pittman's is doing it. The last thing we want to do is have a parking problem that we create. A parking problem because there's so much business and there's not enough parking is great. But taking away parking spaces, we're creating it. We already have a parking problem at certain times of the year. Pumpkin Fest, Coffee Fest. Keep all those things in mind, that's all. And
I
that's-
think I can add a little to what you said from a meeting that I had last fall with Mr. Mitchell, the owner.
Yeah, that's, I heard from him recently too. I mean, I frequent the place.
But
as
if you,
do a lot
if
of
you
people.
walk out the front door of Pittman's toward the railroad tracks.
Correct,
Where the pavement ends is the end of his property.
correct.
Where the cars park now is state property.
State property, correct.
And the Wild Trail would go right through where those cars are parked now,
And that's
on the state
and
property.
knowing that that's already a narrow spot, having that additional state property, as we have seen in some of the photos, has been used by anybody who created as theirs. Pittman's is no different. They've used that space, and I think to the benefit of Pittman's and to the benefit of the community that uses it, as well as, I mean, I have to say, Pittman's brings acts from all over the place, and they bring people from everywhere. This year, I went there for New Year's, and most of the people I talked to, they were from Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. We get a lot of exposure for Laconia from a venue like that. And I just don't think we should, snub our nose at that at the same time, giving Wild Trail some kind of access. And another thing I just wanted to ask, Mr. Beadle, your first photo, one of your first photos was of, I believe, the Riverwalk. Is there any way that we could have incorporated it into the Riverwalk and come this way over instead of going that way?
I don't see that.
Because we had to cross, we're gonna have to cross the tracks over by the beach that you were talking about, correct?
Coming from North Main Street?
Yeah, I mean, because the
Now,
only thing you'd have to do
we're-
is you'd have to cross the tracks
Mr.
again.
McGuire,
Yes. Oh, excuse me.
we're way off track here.
Yes,
in terms
I'm
of-
sorry. I'm asking questions of
having
them
an
because I don't
extra
have the
conversation.
answers. I don't know if you guys do. It's just something for you to think about. And that's all.
So your question was, we can keep this in mind for the next meeting,
Correct.
would there be, if I'm understanding you correctly, your question is, would there be a way to eliminate that section of the Wild Trail and use the Riverwalk instead?
Connect to the Riverwalk maybe so that you could follow through there. I don't know, because one of the first pictures was of the Riverwalk and it made me think, we've just spent a lot of money on that and it's beautiful. Also follows the lake. It does go toward the end over there. Is there any way to connect those two?
Well, I think the plan is to connect those. The Riverwalk is planned to be an offshoot of, but the Riverwalk itself includes stairways, public streets, et cetera, et cetera. It's not as
I gotcha.
clear-cut one-way path.
That was just a
as
question, so you answered some of it. Thank
We
you.
just put in stairs, for example, on the south side of the river by the hotel.
Okay,
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's a steep set of stairs there that are actually part of the Riverwalk that obviously you couldn't ride a bicycle down.
right.
or walk down.
See, that's something, that's why I was asking. Thank you.
This raises a question that I don't know the answer to, and that is, assuming that the Wild Trail does go down New Salem Street in some fashion and the parking, does it do anything in terms of the actual entrance and access to Pittman's in that back lot that they use?
No,
It doesn't.
no. There is a railroad right-of-way that runs through there.
Yeah,
That at one point in time, the owners of Pittman's had a right-of-way that they leased, I think, from the state to get to their back lot.
To get to their back
And whether
lot.
they have current permission to do that or not, I don't know, but there is a railroad spur that runs right toward the police station that dissects through there.
I'm familiar with that. I was just wondering if the Wild Trail was gonna.
It's not a
impact-
used spur, obviously,
Yeah,
but
if the Wild Trail was gonna impact access to Pittman back
no,
lot.
if anything would limit it, it would be that state right-of-way.
Okay.
Because the Pittman building used to be railroad.
I'm sorry?
The Pittman building used to be used by the railroad company.
Yeah, it was a freight room, right?
That's right.
Hence the,
Good evening.
Ms. B&R's pond.
Ms.
Welcome.
Maureen B&R, yes, thank you. I think Sean said quite a bit of what I was going
Can
to
you
say.
get the microphone up close to you, please?
Sure. I think Sean said quite a bit of what I was going to say, but I do know that Dick has asked for a lease in front of the building, but it has been put aside for the WOW Trail. As far as the back area goes, I don't know, but I do know that the front, he did request, but was denied for the WOW Trail. And where that is, without those 12 spots, he figures there's about 40 spaces that he would lose where the WOW Trail would go in,
How many?
40.
Including the state right-of-way and the 12 spaces, which would total to 40?
No, without the 12. So without the 12, where the
40
WOW Trail-
already.
Excuse me?
40 without the,
40 without.
so 40 cars are now parking in the state right-of-way.
Yeah, I guess that would be correct. So, Don Moran has let us park if we have an overflow. But that's only part of that parking area. The other parking area where the Salvation Army is, obviously there's a sign there that says no event parking. So we're not allowed, as far as I know, to park there at all. I obviously enjoy the WOW Trail. I have a mural on it, and I'm certainly all for it. I also have a business at 108 Beacon Street West. There's difficulty in that parking lot. There's always people looking, and we give art classes. People have difficulty coming in, carrying their supplies. They've made several complaints of where else can they park. And I don't have an answer to that. I do tell them about the parking garage, but I'm not sure as to what the access of the parking garage is right now. And we do, the handicap is an issue. Where other businesses, it's their back door. For freight room, it's their front door. So when you come in, I know it's not their property, as you say, but that's where handicapped people have stopped. The ramps are there. And so what do we do with that? That's also an issue. We have musicians and people who come from as far as Australia to right through New England. They eat downtown, they stay downtown. So they do bring a lot of business into Laconia. And if anything, we need more parking than less. I guess that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else tonight on this or any other matter that's on tonight's agenda? Ms. Henderson.
Hi. So in addition to owning a business downtown, I also live on Whipple Avenue, just half mile away from my business. So I walk the route on down Pleasant Street to Main Street every day, whether it's Monday, Sunday, doesn't matter. And I see those 12 spots all the time, not just when I happen to come downtown, not just, once every few weeks. I see them every day. And they are used a lot. I would probably pick Monday being a lighter day, since there are many businesses downtown that are closed on Monday. But this is also a rare occasion where the 2-hour parking limit is not enforced because of the parking garage situation. So those people that work downtown are parking into our parking, and they're allowed to. So, with a great many businesses opening up downtown right now, which is phenomenal, all good things, and I think the WOW Trail is a phenomenal, phenomenal thing, and I think it should go through, but you're opening up the can of worms that is the much larger issue, which is the parking downtown. With the exception of the parking spots that were added with the Congregational Church and TIF working together, when was the last time the city added spots once they took them away? This is the kind of thing that we're looking at as downtown business owners, that especially in the transition right now with the Colonial Theater, we're going to deal with the Canal Street not having parking, possibility of the construction workers mobilizing in the municipal lot, plus the summer stuff that we have going on with the farmers markets, plus there might happen to be a funeral that day. Where is everyone going to park? Right now, thinking last year, those 12 spots were used by Bank of New Hampshire personnel, while the 2-hour parking was actually enforced, because those are all-day parking. And they're not the parking garage. You can still see your place of work. And line of sight has a lot to do with where people want to park, unfortunately. So, if you're gonna take them away, I would hope you would want to put them somewhere else. But ultimately, the parking garage, 12 spots, I don't care what it is, you have to find a way. And it's not just about Pitmans. They are in the downtown parking overlay. If you look at the zoning map, it's right there. It's the only overlay in the entire city. Those spots are needed for everyone. So, good luck.
Anyone else wish to speak tonight? Mr. Moriarty?
Good evening. I'm trying to think of what remarks might be germane for you to hear before the public hearing on the 9th. Before I start, I just want to conduct a moment of personal business. Alan, Mary and I would like 2 tickets to the wall ball, if you could make sure we're down for that list. So John Moriarty speaking now in the official capacity of the Laconia Main Street Initiative. And like the downtown TIF district, we were asked by the powers that be to take the temperature of downtown. And I take my homework assignments very seriously, and I would grade this one a solid B, maybe a B+. I've had roughly 100 hours of conversations with downtown business owners, operators, investors, and residents. And of those more than 70 conversations that I had, I can say not one single person came out to speak in opposition to the WOW Trail. Not one single person said that the WOW Trail should not be moved forward. Not one single person thought that City Council should vote to the contrary. Having said that, because there's always a but, the but to that is that I did lose track of some of the numbers a little bit, but in the conversations that I can document, of those 70, 68 said under no circumstances should anybody, City Council included, reduce the number of parking spaces within the downtown district. Again, of those 70, 2 businesses or individuals indicated that they would entertain a quid pro quo of these parking spaces for those parking spaces at some later date in order to move the WOW Trail forward on their time schedule, understanding the immediacy of the need for that decision. And again, no person, no individual said under no circumstance should these parking spaces be I think I got that wrong. Under no circumstance should the WOW Trail be forestalled for those parking spaces. So I think that's a pretty overwhelming response. And I find it encouraging that everyone that I've spoken with in downtown sees the benefit of the WOW Trail, not to downtown, not to the city of Laconia, but to the entire community of the Lakes region. And so I think they appreciate what Alan and the board, the WOW board, has done. But I think that there's pretty clear that things are not the same in downtown as they have been for the last 10 years. And I'd like to give you a few unscientific numbers. I've really wrestled with this, and I can't give you better data, but I'm still working on it. But when the downtown overlay parking district was created, there were some 1,100 parking spaces in the vicinity of downtown. Through various operations, the Rotary Riverside Park, a great project, some of the Green Islands and City Hall parking lot, the north extension of the Riverwalk, the Binney Media investment, we saw the need of one more business, and the Holy Grail moved to town, and we gave them 2 parking spaces for their dumpster. In total, the 1,100 parking spaces are now 18% fewer than they were when the parking overlay district was created. That number hovering now somewhere around 900 parking spaces. And then if you add on top of that the reduction caused by the closure of the upper deck of the parking garage, according to my aerial map, 72 parking spaces, we're now at 825 parking spaces where we once saw 1,100. So I think one of the downtown business operators said it most eloquently when he said, 12 parking spaces is not going to break or make most of downtown, understanding the exception Pittman's Freight Room. But that we do need to look very, very seriously at how to restore those some 300 parking spaces that we are now without. And if you've had a chance to frequent downtown in the last several months, I think you will agree that parking is a different situation now than it was. So I look forward to working with the downtown community and the WOW Trail community. Perhaps we can have an open forum or discussion. I know I owe Gretchen Gandini several emails. I'm sorry, Gretchen. But if we can be instrumental in bringing everyone together, please consider us wanting to be part of the solution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else tonight? Okay, we'll move on then to the manager's report and recognize Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of items for your attention. One, I'm going to add a little bit based on a comment that was made at the podium. I just want to...
Has to do with the WOW Trail, and the appropriate motion would be to schedule a public hearing to be included on the city council agenda on May 9th during the regular city council meeting for all to hear from the public on all matters concerning Phase 2 of the WOW Trail development. A motion to that effect, Councilor Councilor Hamel. Is there a second to that motion? Councilor Doyle, any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. So that will be on the agenda on the 9th of May. Unfinished business.
Mr. Mayor, if I could?
Sorry, yes.
And I'm recommending we use the same specific language that we used here and speak specifically to the discontinuance of the parking spaces in the right-hand turn when we advertise it, just for erring on the side of public knowledge with that.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
So who made the motion? Councilor Hamel did, and the second was from Councilor Doyle. Do either of you object to that?
Nope.
Specifying that language?
No, that's fine.
That's in tonight's agenda. Does the clerk have that? You're specifying the motion that passed, Mr. Hamel's motion, seconded by Mrs. Doyle, sorry. Mrs. Doyle, that language include the specifics that are in tonight's agenda.
So what I have is that it will include the construction Phase 2 of the WOW Trail and the elimination of dedicated right turn lane on New Salem Street and 12 parking spaces on New Salem Street in the area of Pittman's Freight Room.
Yes, I just want to make sure that the motion includes the language that I used, meaning that any issue regarding Phase 2 would be germane, not just limited to those specifics, but including those specifics. Councilor Littman.
So just in terms of how we structure the hearing, it seemed like, Councilor Bear made the point earlier about there being sort of an further informational component before we start the hearing. I don't know that we have to design it right now, but in terms of, as opposed to just taking public comment on something that people might not fully appreciate, maybe have a, on those particular items, I think there was an offer to, present some plans and just walk people through what the changes are before we start the hearing,
Prior to the hearing, you mean?
or as a part of the hearing, the opening of the hearing.
Okay.
Probably their engineer or architect could go through the
We could
plan.
ask the Wow Trail, Mr. Beadle, to make a very consolidated presentation on just that aspect of it that night at the beginning of the hearing.
Yeah, or perhaps we schedule.
Can you come up to the microphone, please?
Yes.
Perhaps, what's the meeting start at 7? Public
Yes.
hearing? So perhaps at 6, we have the engineer available
Well,
and,
we have a budget meeting.
We have a
at
budget
6.
meeting starting at 6 o'clock that night.
but I mean for the public to get in and look at the details and have all the plans laid out, so anyone could come and get into that earlier, perhaps.
Well, what we could do if we advertise it perhaps is we could have the plans spread out in the conference room.
There, or
could
we-
have-
depending
could
if
have
they're on
While we're
easels,
having
yeah.
a hearing in here, the plans could be spread out on the large table next door in the conference room, and we could advertise it, that people could view them before the start of the public hearing there.
We can work with you on that.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, one item of unfinished business, refer you to page 80 in your packet.
Don't we need to,
Did you call that?
don't we need to
Did we not
approve?
vote?
No.
Not for the second time, not for the amended
Apologize.
motion.
Sidetracked here. All right, we have a motion on the floor.